Welcome, Dolphins fans, haters, and everyone in between to your favorite show discussing the greatest franchise in sports, the Miami Dolphins. This is the PhinsPod. My name is Moose, your host, and we have an answer, folks. The Dolphins announced last week that they will be promoting both Eric Studesville and George Godsey to the role of co-offensive coordinators. Does this make any sense? How's it going to work, and who's going to be calling the plays? Well, we're going to do our best to try and figure out what Miami's offense may look like come the fall. As always, we'll also take a quick look at the latest stories published over at PhinsPod as well, at PhinsPod.com. And before we get started, if you could leave a review of the podcast on Apple Podcasts, if that's where you listen, it'd be greatly appreciated. Really helps the show out and helps other Dolphins fans join the pod. But without further ado, let's dive in.
Do you watch film of Patrick Mahomes, and do you see anything in his game that you like? Obviously, a lot that you like, but you watch film of him and look at other quarterbacks to try to improve your game?
I do actually, and you get a lot of things that you want to do, and you go out and try them, and sometimes they're just way out of what you can actually do, and so you try to find other ways on how you can go about doing those things. With Pat, it's, looking one way and throwing to the opposite side of the field sometimes, and also throwing across his body. But I mean, he has tremendous athleticism, and, his arm strength is out of this world too. So I just find little things that I feel I can put into my game, from watching other guys like, Pat, Tom Brady with his pocket presence he has going on, Drew Brees, because Drew isn't as tall too. So, kind of seeing how he maneuvers his way through the pocket, and also Russ, I try to implement, a little bit of, everyone into my game, I'd say too.
Yeah, Drew Brees, Russell Wilson, fair comparison. One last question before we let you go. Brian Flores is a unique coach. He's a young coach, and there was a couple of moments last year where I watched him run out on the field to defend his players. I think it was the Cincinnati Bengals game where there was some hits that were questionable, and he ran out there, and then the players ran out there to protect him. I saw something in that moment where this is a guy that really cares deeply about his players, and he's got their back. And in turn, I saw the players really care deeply about him. It seems that he's built that immediately, where that relationship between coach and player is at a whole nother level. What can you say about that? What have you noticed in the short time that you've been in Miami?
Yeah, well, I've noticed the amount of respect he has, within his players when I got in, into the building the first time. And I would say that the biggest thing with, the organization under Coach Flo is it's not a team, but it's a family, and, a lot of the guys create relationships with each other. And, when there's a lot of competition going on in the building, usually, guys are just bumping heads, or no one wants to, talk to the guys in their position group. But, it's been really cool to see, everyone getting along with one another. And also keeping that same competitive spirit, with them. So when Flo went out, obviously everyone's fired up to go out with them, because that's not something you normally see from a coach. So when that happened, that was pretty cool to see that, we had his back, and, that he had our backs as well.
Firstly, we would like to congratulate the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on their Super Bowl victory. It was a great performance from their defense and Todd Bowles. Hate to see Tom Brady win, but the silver lining is that maybe all that magic in New England that we've had to deal with for the last 2 decades was more Tom than we realized. And that fear of Bill Belichick that still lingers may have been more than deserved, considering the outcome of this season. I mean, look, Brady leaves New England, he wins a Super Bowl, and Bill goes 7-9. And when you consider that 2 of those wins were against the New York Jets, so really 5-9, it's really not that impressive. But regardless, the championship run by the Buccaneers does show the league one thing, that this thing's wide open. The Chiefs are the most talented team in the league. They have the best weapons, the best quarterback, and they were held down with relative ease on any given Sunday. And that's where the saying, any given Sunday, comes to fruition, and why it's so true. The Dolphins, bringing it back home with some improvement, can be knocking on the door of legitimate contention much sooner than we realize. Other news and notes to get into before we dive into the meat of the episode. The Dolphins made an agreement to a futures contract with center Cameron Tom. Tom is an undrafted free agent out of Southern Mississippi. In 2017 is when he came out, so he has been in the league for a few years. He spent his career with the New Orleans Saints, appearing in 11 games for the team with 1 start, and he's likely going to serve as either, if he makes the team for the Dolphins, a depth piece on the interior of the offensive line, if not, just a competitive camp body for the offseason. Look, Miami may look to bolster the interior of the offensive line through the draft and free agency. It makes sense. It was one of their weak points in establishing the run and building a solid pocket for Tua throughout the season. And Ted Karras is an impending free agent. I foresee the Dolphins bringing him back on a team-friendly deal, but look, the Dolphins still might need to look at the draft or in free agency to upgrade at that position. If Ted Karras can become sort of a swing interior offensive lineman for you, that's great, because that's really what his role should be on a really good offensive line. But if he's your starting center, then all right, there's definitely some room for improvement. So bringing in a guy like Tom, I think it just points to the fact that they're not necessarily satisfied with what they're getting from the center position. Now, moving forward, it was a rough weekend for Dolphins fans. The Dolphins continue to suffer as a result of being historically irrelevant in the 21st century. The snubs from around the league just keep on coming. Not only was Xavien Howard the only player selected to represent the Dolphins for the Pro Bowl during the season, despite awesome seasons from Jason Sanders, Jakeem Grant as a return man, as well as Emmanuel Ogbah. But regardless, more sad news came this past weekend when Zach Thomas, a clear-cut Hall of Famer for anyone who truly knows ball and watched the man play, missed out again on a Hall of Fame induction on a yellow jacket. To be fair, the class was loaded this year, with the likes of Peyton Manning, Charles Woodson, and Megatron joining some other legends in Canton. But still, Zach Thomas should have his bust in the Hall of Fame. And look, maybe the Dolphins should look at finding a better candidate to pitch the players to the committee. But hey, that's just me. That's just me. In terms of seasonal awards, the Phins came up short once again. Brian Flores was snubbed as Coach of the Year in favor of Browns' Kevin Stefanski. That's tough. I mean, Stefanski did lead his team further than Flores did, so that's fair, despite the turnaround that Flores was able to make for the Dolphins. And perhaps the worst snub of all came for Defensive Player of the Year. We all know who deserves the title, but alas, the league awarded Aaron Donald the Defensive Player of the Year with 27 votes. In second place, no, not Xavien Howard, it was TJ Watt with 20 votes. And our boy wound up with 3 votes. Yes, 3. Moving on from the overall atrocities there, it's important to understand why this keeps happening, though. Respect. Other members of the NFL don't respect the Dolphins due to their recent history. For that reason, you don't get the benefit of the doubt in these situations. You don't get that fringe Pro Bowler. You don't get the fan love star inducted into the Hall of Fame, even though the stats might not back it up. I'm looking at you, Lynch. And you don't get recognition for good coaching without winning. Miami is very close to fully realizing this turnaround that started at the start of the 2019 season. And once that begins happening, the accolades will follow. Next year, you will see these awards get presented to the Dolphins if they're able to continue the progression of the franchise. Now, moving forward to the main story of last week, the Dolphins have filled the offensive coordinator position. We speculated in our last episode who the Dolphins may look to find to fill the void that was left by Chan Gailey. Many felt like the likeliest candidate was someone still coaching in the playoffs. Considering it took 4 weeks to announce the hires, people thought, hey, they're waiting on someone. However, following Senior Bowl week, the team came forward and revealed the groundbreaking restructure, if I can speak English. Both Eric Studesville and George Godsey were named as co-offensive coordinators. Yeah, you heard that right. Co-offensive coordinators. Co-coordinators. Unconventional, to say the least. The only team with this structure in the NFL, at least formally listed as this structure in the NFL right now. And what can we expect from it? I think personally this points to Tua staying. I think this move was to keep the most continuity as possible for the offense and have the least turnaround for this young team that's looking to take that next step in 2021. I think George Godsey will likely handle the play calling duties. He has experience from when he called plays with Bill O'Brien in Houston, and although that's not really lauded that much, people don't really talk a lot about that, he did help lead the Texans offense to the 15th ranked offense that year. Not great, but it's not shabby either when you consider that his quarterback was Brock Osweiler. And we know a thing or two about Brock. So, look, if you can take Brock Osweiler and get him a 15th ranked offense, yes, you had a lot of talent on that team outside of the quarterback, obviously. But, hey, Godsey clearly has shown that he has a rapport with Tua. And the fact that he most likely will be calling the plays as well, because, again, he understands what his quarterback is sort of feeling in that moment. But, hey, that could be different. But Eric Studesville will likely then work as the run game coordinator. So similar to sort of what we saw in San Francisco when we were looking at Mike McDaniels as a potential option for offensive coordinator, he was the 49ers run game coordinator. They also had LaFleur, who was hired away for the Jets offensive coordinator position. He was their passing game coordinator. So you're sort of seeing this. And I believe Brian Flores has looked around the league and realized that maybe that this is the next progression in organizational structure. The 49ers with Shanahan, the Packers with LaFleur as well, they have these passing game and running game coordinators like we mentioned. And this allows coaches, especially head coaches, to divvy up the responsibilities and allow players to then focus on their niche roles on the offense assigned to coaches who are working with them for that exact, role and responsibility. The other benefit of doing that is it protects you if you have someone hired off of your staff. So unless both co-coordinators get hired away, which as for head coaching positions, because that's really the only jump left, is if either Godsey or Studesville is offered maybe their own position as a coordinator or as a head coach. So that's the only way you lose both of them. It's the best way to keep some form of continuity going because you will retain at least one of your coordinators who can sort of take on the full role. The final benefit of this approach is that, like we mentioned, the terminology won't be changing. So learning the new material and, the additions to the offense and sort of the new way that Godsey might want to attack from the passing game, maybe a change in the way that we run the football, something Studesville has been wanting to integrate. I do think we're going to see some changes, but in terms of learning the system and what it's going to be built out of internally in Davie, I think the terminology will be more similar and it'll be geared to be learned as fast as possible. And look, I think we're going to have a much clearer idea of how this is all going to shake out once training camp begins in earnest. And look, I'm not ecstatic about this move, but I'm certainly not down on it either. We don't really know how this is going to work out. We don't know the rapport between Studesville and Godsey. But if you have faith in what Flores has been doing to this point and the decisions he's made, and he knows the types of people he's working with and his players' personalities and how that, chemistry all meshes together, I don't think he would make this move if he didn't feel like that relationship was solid. And hey, the Dolphins will at least have some flexibility offensively with multiple minds looking at defenses on a week in and a week out basis. Their different experiences can come together to create the best game plan possible. And alternatively, and this is the only reason that I said I wasn't ecstatic, it's just that we don't know, like I said, that relationship and whether or not there's any ego involved. And it's easy to say when you're being offered a promotion that, hey, no, I can work with them. Like, I have no issue. But once you're there and you're kind of given that power, that's when the ego starts to crop up. So, it could result in too many cooks in the kitchen and just having too many voices. But again, the other point here is that these guys have worked together for 2 seasons already, 2 full seasons. And Studesville is a holdover from the Adam Gase era as well. So clearly he's a team player. To accept a coaching position for the same franchise with a new coaching regime, it shows some, humble pie there. It also shows Brian Flores, he respects what Studesville does. That doesn't always happen. You usually kind of get rid of those coaches because you don't really want any, that's that guy's coach, not my coach. But Brian Flores came in, noticed, hey, this guy's an amazing running backs coach. Why would I try to look for an improvement when I have someone who can do the job amazingly here already? He kept him on. You don't think that Eric Studesville appreciates that and really feels valued? Not to mention that now he's been promoted. So I don't think this will really be an issue. The only person I could really see making a problem with it would be Godsey, just because I know that he has a very close relationship with Brian Flores, and he might getting a promotion with someone else, he might feel a little belittled. But hey, let's hope that these guys are all professionals and none of that bullshit starts up. I'm just trying to look at it from the worst case scenario where the reason people go 2 coordinators, that's the only real negative. So, hey, You can't be faulted for being an optimistic Dolphins fan. At the end of the day, the OC can only help and hurt so much. It's really about the quarterback. So this conversation will inevitably come back to what it always comes back to, and that's Tua Tagovailoa. And we're going to have so much more on Tua and the Phins in the coming weeks as well.
Well, I mean, I know better than anybody the situation I was in. I said it early on in training camp. I was the placeholder until they thought Tua was ready to go, and that didn't make it any less hurtful when it happened.
Right.
And I want to be out there. I'm a competitor, and as I got older in this league, I'm able to say what I feel a little bit more, and that's how I felt. And I didn't try to take anything away from Tua or the team, and I accepted the role that they gave me and try to thrive in the role as his backup. And doesn't mean it didn't hurt not to be out there.
First of all, it is a weird relationship, you and Tua. I like it. I get it. He's lucky to have you. But like right now, you're going to go into camp. You're going to battle. Has there ever been kind of a weird moment with Tua ever?
Not really. I mean, part of it is the age difference. I'm like old enough to be his grandpa pretty much.
Yeah.
So it always has been the student and the teacher, and he's done a great job of being willing to ask those questions. And, I probably do too good of a job of offering advice. He doesn't need to listen to all of it, but, there's no ego between either of us. And it really was a good relationship. He came in willing to learn and worked his butt off. And that's pretty much all he needed from me, to watch him work as hard as he did.
When did you know Brian Flores was good? Because he's clearly really good. When did you sense it, that he was special?
We started the year, I think, getting outscored his first season in those first 4 games by over 100 points or maybe even 140 points. And we got to 0-7. And I think it was right about then when, he decided he was going to put his personality and his stamp on the football team. He started being more of himself, putting more of himself into practice and meetings in terms of his personality. And right there, I saw that he was going to be a special player. I mean, he's a young guy. He's 39 years old. He can really relate to the players. Players can relate to him and, look at him and respect him. He has a great presence in the room. And I was really happy to see the success that he was able to generate this year with our team, going 10-6 from a team that was called the worst team in the history of the NFL 2 years ago. He's done a great job and will continue to improve that organization.
Thank you guys so much for listening. That's going to do it for us here today. I really hope you enjoyed the episode. Thank you, as always, for tuning in to the PhinsPod. Really hope you enjoyed it and got something out of it. The Dolphins are potentially going to be setting the trend for how to hire coordinators in the modern NFL, or Brian Flores is making a mistake here, and it could really harm his young quarterback's development. Regardless, we're going to be here for the ride. So please remember to subscribe to the show wherever it is that you listen, just to never miss a chance to chat about your favorite team, the Miami Dolphins. The show itself is available on all platforms: Spotify, Apple and Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, and YouTube. Continue the conversation with us on Twitter and Instagram @PhinsPod, and check out the site for news and content, PhinsPod.com. I hope you have an amazing day, and until next time, stay safe. Love y'all.